Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. The world of Harry Potter is vast, and even the best film adaptations cannot contain every detail hidden in the books. One of the characters who suffered the most from these omissions is Professor Phileas Flitwick, a brilliant spellcaster, duelist, and one of the most remarkable professors at Hogwarts. Today, we'll explore facts about Flitwick that only those who read the original books know. Enjoy watching. Number 1. He was almost sorted into Gryffindor. Although we know Flitwick as the head of Ravenclaw, few realize he could have been placed in Gryffindor. The sorting hat hesitated for several minutes, choosing between the two houses, and even leaned toward Gryffindor. In the end, it sorted him into Ravenclaw, but the very fact highlights the complexity of his character. Number 2, a duel club champion. Hermione's mention in Chamber of Secrets that Flitwick had once been a champion duelist explains a lot. He is not just a professor, but an outstanding master of combat spells, capable of facing even the most experienced wizards. This fact makes him one of the most formidable and respected teachers at the school. Number 3, he fought Snape. In the movie, we see a duel between McGonagall and Snape, but the book version is much more epic. When Snape confronted Harry, McGonagall challenged him to a duel. Sprout, Slughorn, and Flitwick rushed to help her. It was Flitwick who used a spell that animated the suits of armor and temporarily immobilized Snape. In this scene, he proved himself as an experienced duelist and a true defender of Hogwarts. Number 4, he enchanted the Hogwarts doors to recognize Sirius. During the events of Prisoner of Azkaban, after Sirius escaped, Flitwick cast complex recognition spells on the school doors. They were meant to block Black from entering, but neither the students nor the professors knew Sirius was an animagus. So despite all the magical protections, Black easily entered the school, a major surprise to everyone. Number 5. He preserved Fred and George Swamp. In Order of the Phoenix, the famous Weasley twins created a portable swamp to help Harry speak with Sirius. The swamp was so cleverly enchanted that Umbridge couldn't remove it. Later, Flitwick cleaned up the mess but deliberately left a small section behind, as a tribute to the Weasleys' brave mischief. This is one of the most touching details of his story. Number 6, he was not a member of the Order of the Phoenix. Although Flitwick actively fought during Voldemort's first rise to power, he was never a member of the Order of the Phoenix. Unlike many professors, his role was not officially connected to Dumbledore's organization. Perhaps he felt his main duty was to protect the students and serve Hogwarts. This is an interesting detail, given that his knowledge of charms made him one of the most valuable allies of the good side. Number 7, he asked the Grey Lady about the diadem. As a Ravenclaw, Flitwick, like many members of his house, was fascinated by the legend of the lost Ravenclaw diadem. He, like Dumbledore, questioned the Grey Lady about its location, but she refused to tell either of them. Only 2 people managed to get an answer from her, Tom Riddle and Harry Potter. Number 8, Professor Sprout and Flitwick once had a romantic relationship. Fans learned this only for the 20th anniversary of the first book. The anniversary edition on Hufflepuff mentions that Sprout and Flitwick once had a romantic relationship. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, but the 2 professors remained good friends. Considering their shared cheerfulness and humor, it's easy to believe. Number 9 comforted Professor Trelawney after her humiliation. When Professor Umbridge humiliated Sybil Trelawney in Order of the Phoenix, it was a moment that left many teachers silent, unsure of how to respond. Trelawney, with her frail nerves and theatrical personality, was on the verge of breaking But there, standing apart from the others, was Professor Flitwick. He quietly approached her after the ordeal, his voice soft but steady. "You don't deserve this, Sybil," he said, offering her a reassuring smile. His words, simple and genuine, broke through her tears. Trelawney, who often lived in a world of isolation, found comfort in Flitwick's rare show of empathy. The scene was a quiet one, but it carried the weight of a deeper truth. Flitwick, despite his small size and often cheerful demeanour, had a deep well of kindness. He wasn't just a colleague who stood by when things got tough. He actively offered support where others remained indifferent. When Trelawney hesitated, unsure if anyone else cared, Flitwick's simple act of kindness reminded her she was not alone. It was a rare moment of solidarity, one that showed the true heart of the little professor, whose sensitivity often went unnoticed. Number 10, his high-pitched voice was mentioned in the books too. Flitwick's high-pitched voice was one of his defining features, both in the films and in the books. In Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Rowling describes him as having a squeaky, high-pitched voice that seemed almost at odds with his small frame. It was a voice that could carry across the entire classroom despite its delicate sound. And when the students were nervous, especially during exams, his voice became even higher, trembling with concern. Quote, he'd say, his tone rising with each word, as though his small stature could only be matched by the worry in his voice. During the exams, Harry noticed that Flitwick often looked just as nervous as his students. His voice would tremble when he reassured them, even though he was a seasoned professor. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Harry recalls Flitwick saying, oh dear, I do hope you'll do well, do be careful." The voice was so high-pitched and filled with anxiety that it made some students grin despite the pressure of the tests. It was almost as if the small, frail professor was more afraid of their mistakes than they were. It wasn't just during exams, though. Even in the midst of teaching, Flitwick's voice could turn squeaky with excitement. When showing a new spell to the class, he would often become so animated that his voice would shoot up in pitch and his tiny hands would move rapidly. It was a voice that reflected his boundless energy, even if his physical size seemed to suggest otherwise. For Flitwick, his voice was as much a part of his character as his charm and his sharp intellect, a perfect blend of warmth and vulnerability that made him one of the most endearing professors at Hogwarts. Number 11 saved students from enchanted traps during the 6th year. Flitwick worked tirelessly during the events of Half-Blood Prince, even though no one outside the staff truly knew how much danger he faced. After the cursed necklace nearly killed Katie Bell, he was one of the first professors called to investigate. Rowling notes that Flitwick examined the chain with tense concentration, muttering counter-charms under his breath as he searched for hidden triggers. He warned the students to stay back, then whispered, "This is dark magic of the worst sort." His voice was calm, but Harry could see the alertness in his eyes, the look of a man who knew the stakes were rising. Later, when Ron Weasley was poisoned by the tampered mead meant for Dumbledore, Flitwick joined McGonagall and Snape in securing Slughorn's office. He inspected every bottle, tapping each one with his wand and listening for the faint echo of curse residue. When one bottle hissed and emitted a thin trail of green smoke, Flitwick stepped forward without hesitation. "Back, please," he said, before casting a shield charm so sharp it sliced the smoke in half. His bravery often seemed quiet, almost gentle, But in moments like this, it shone unmistakably. Teachers whispered privately that someone inside the castle was orchestrating these attacks. Flitwick refused to let fear spread among the younger students. He patrolled the corridors late at night, checking armor, portraits, even doorknobs for hexes. Once, Harry saw him crouched beside a stair railing, one tip glowing blue. "Another trap avoided," Flitwick murmured. He didn't brag. He didn't seek credit. He simply protected the children, one disarmed curse at a time, proving that he was every bit as courageous as the heroes whose names fill the history books. Number 12. Deeply mourned Dumbledore's death. After Dumbledore's death in Half-Blood Prince, Hogwarts felt hollow. Even the portraits seemed quieter. Harry wandered the corridors in a daze until he passed the Charms corridor and heard a small, broken sound behind a half-closed door. It was Professor Flitwick. Rowling describes him as sitting with his face buried in his hands, his tiny shoulders shaking. The sight stunned Harry. Flitwick was always cheerful, always composed. Seeing him like this made the loss feel even heavier. Flitwick looked up when Harry entered. His eyes were red, but he tried to smile. "Albus." He was a great wizard, he whispered, voice trembling. "And an even greater man." He gestured weakly toward the shelves of spellbooks around him. "Everything we defended here." He believed in it. Harry didn't know what to say. The grief in the room was so thick it felt like a physical weight pressing on his chest. Later McGonagall told Harry that Flitwick and Dumbledore had worked side by side for decades. He admired Albus more than anyone, she said softly. They had shared dozens of late-night conversations about ancient magic, dueling theory, and the future of the school. To Flitwick, Dumbledore was not just a headmaster, he was a mentor, a partner, and a friend. Losing him was like losing a part of the castle itself. When the staff gathered for the funeral, Flitwick stood near the front, hands clasped tightly together. When the white phoenix flame rose over the lake, he closed his eyes and a single tear slipped down his cheek. It was the quiet grief of a man who rarely showed pain, and because of that, it struck harder than any cry. In that moment, the tiny professor seemed smaller than ever, yet braver than most. Number 13 fought off giants during the Battle of Hogwarts. During the Battle of Hogwarts, Phileas Flitwick revealed a side of himself the films never showed. When the giants supporting Voldemort stormed the castle grounds, he did not retreat or hide behind the protective charms he had helped raise. He stepped forward, wand lifted high, standing on the shattered stones of the courtyard, like a warrior half his size and twice as brave. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Rowling writes that Flitwick sent a giant staggering backward with a blast of silver light. It was a moment that stunned even the students fighting nearby. The giant roared, swinging a massive club. Flitwick dodged it with a speed that seemed almost unreal for such a tiny man. He shouted, "Protego Maxima!" and the shield blasted outward, shaking the ground. The force of his magic made the air shimmer. It was the same spell he had used earlier to strengthen the castle's defenses, but now it was raw power aimed directly at a creature many times his size. The giant stumbled, crashing into a wall and bringing a rain of stones down with him. Neville Longbottom later said he had never seen a spell hit so hard. He described Flitwick as furious but focused, like he'd been waiting his whole life for this fight. Even Professor Sprout, who battled nearby with her arsenal of enchanted plants, shouted encouragement as Flitwick sent another wave of magic surging across the courtyard. His duel with the giants became one of the turning points that kept the defenders from being overwhelmed in the first assault. When the dust settled, Flitwick stood in the middle of the ruined courtyard, breathing hard, robes torn, wand still glowing. He looked nothing like the cheerful charms master who decorated Christmas trees with living fairies. In that moment, he was a master duelist, a protector of Hogwarts, and one of the few wizards strong enough to force giants to retreat. His courage that night proved what Dumbledore had always known: some of the greatest power in magic comes in the smallest form. Number 14 secretly gave Harry candy after his Skeeter interview. After Harry's interview with Rita Skeeter in Order of the Phoenix, the castle buzzed with whispers. Umbridge was furious, students were divided, and Harry walked through the corridors feeling the weight of every stare. Professor Flitwick noticed. He always did. One afternoon, after Charms class, he called Harry back with a gentle, "Just a moment, Mr. Potter." His voice was soft, almost conspiratorial. Flitwick reached into his drawer and pulled out a small box wrapped in bright paper. "A bit of cheer," he said quietly, placing it into Harry's hands. Inside were chocolate frogs, Harry, his favourite. Rowling writes that Flitwick gave it to him with a sympathetic little smile. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't meant to be seen. It was simply kindness in its purest form, the kind Harry rarely received that year. Harry hesitated, unsure how to react. He had grown used to hostility and suspicion from the rest of the staff under Umbridge's rule. But Flitwick's eyes were warm. "Don't let her get you down," he whispered, glancing toward the door, as if Umbridge herself might appear at any second. Harry nodded. The box felt surprisingly heavy, not because of the chocolate, but because someone believed him enough to offer comfort. Later that evening, upstairs in the Gryffindor common room, Harry opened the box. A single chocolate frog jumped onto his lap before he caught it. The card inside was Salazar Slytherin, of all wizards. He laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. That tiny gift restored something Umbridge had been chipping away at, and it came from Professor Flitwick, the man who always supported quietly but fiercely, with gestures so small they were almost invisible, yet powerful enough to change a boy's entire day. Number 15 loved using live fairies for Christmas decorations. Professor Phileas Flitwick had a special talent for transforming Hogwarts into a living fairy tale during Christmas. His favorite decoration was unusual even by wizarding standards: real, fluttering fairies. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, they appeared as tiny, glittering beings darting among the branches, their wings scattering sparks of light. Flitwick didn't just hang ornaments. He animated the entire Great Hall with magic that felt warm, gentle, and full of childlike wonder. He personally enchanted the fairies, guiding them as they circled the towering Christmas trees. The students watched them with awe. Hermione Granger once stood beneath a tree whispering, "They look alive," and for a moment she forgot exams, homework, and house rivalries. Flitwick's decorations had that effect. They softened the atmosphere of Hogwarts and made everyone feel safe, even during difficult years. His creativity revealed a deeper truth about his character. Flitwick loved details and small, bright things that others might overlook. He believed magic wasn't only for duels or defense. It was also for beauty. When he released a group of silver-winged fairies into the hall, he clapped his hands in delight. Even stern Professor McGonagall smiled at the sight, and that alone proved how powerful his Christmas charm was. The fairies became a hallmark of his festive preparations, a tradition the students anticipated every year. They hovered above the tables, landing softly on garlands, sometimes giggling like tiny bells. In those moments, Hogwarts felt alive in a different way, not mysterious or dangerous, but joyful. And at the center of it all stood Flitwick, small in stature but unmatched in his gift for turning magic into celebration. Number 16 praised Hermione's shield-charming class. Professor Flitwick was an undeniably beloved character at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. He wasn't just a charming small wizard with a reputation for being one of the most skilled charms professors. He was also someone who deeply valued his students' abilities. Among the various moments in the books that reveal his true character, there is one that stands out for its subtle yet powerful significance. When Professor Flitwick praised Hermione Granger for her performance of the shield charm, Protego, during a charms lesson. This small but telling incident serves as an insightful example of both Hermione's talent and Flitwick is teaching philosophy. It is an event that, while perhaps unnoticed by many casual readers, holds considerable weight for those who have paid close attention to the details of the series. The scene unfolds during a charms lesson in the third year, when Professor Flitwick begins the class by instructing his students in the art of casting defensive spells. The shield charm, Protego, is one of the most important and basic forms of defensive magic, yet it is notoriously difficult to master, especially for young witches and wizards. Hermione, as usual, approaches the task with her trademark dedication and focus. When it's her turn to perform the spell, she executes it with such precision and control that the charm shimmers brightly in the air, visibly creating a protective shield. It's a moment of pure brilliance on Hermione's part, but what makes this moment even more special is the fact that it's Professor Flitwick, not just any teacher, who recognizes and praises her effort. Flitwick's reaction to Hermione's spell is a key element of the scene. Known for being a kind and encouraging instructor, Flitwick does not hesitate to express his admiration. He praises Hermione in front of the entire class, saying that such a skillful use of the Protego charm is rare even among older students. This is not just a simple compliment, it's a recognition of Hermione's exceptional magical ability, one that sets her apart, even in a school full of talented witches and wizards. Professor Flitwick's praise is a testament to the fact that he genuinely values skill and effort, regardless of age or status. The significance of Flitwick's compliment lies in the context of his character. As a professor who has seen countless students pass through his classroom, Flitwick has developed a keen eye for recognizing real talent. His reputation as a highly skilled charms master is well earned, and his standards are high. So when he praises Hermione in this way, it speaks volumes. Unlike some teachers who might dismiss the efforts of younger students or only offer praise when it is absolutely earned, Flitwick recognizes the potential in his pupils early on and encourages them to reach for greater heights. His acknowledgement of Hermione's skill with Protego is not just a moment of encouragement, it's a moment that reinforces his role as a mentor who values his students' growth. This particular incident also highlights Hermione's own growth as a witch. By the time she's in her third year, Hermione is already an accomplished student. But moments like this serve as reminders that her abilities are beyond what most young witches and wizards could achieve. Protego, though a basic charm, requires an understanding of concentration and the ability to control magical energy. It's a fundamental part of defensive magic, and for Hermione to master it at such a young age is an early sign of her formidable magical talent. The fact that Flitwick praises her in front of the class shows that Hermione has earned her place among the best, even if she isn't always recognized for it by her peers. To be acknowledged by Professor Flitwick is a significant milestone in her magical education. While the Protego incident may seem like a small moment in the grander narrative of the Harry Potter series, it actually reveals quite a bit about Hermione's character and the importance of mentorship in the magical world. Hermione has always been driven by a deep desire to prove herself, both to others and to herself. Her innate desire to excel often leads her to put in more work than her classmates, but it's moments like this where her efforts are truly validated. Professor Flitwick's praise, coming from someone of his experience and stature, is a public acknowledgement of her skill and dedication. It's a small but pivotal moment that reinforces Hermione's confidence in her abilities and shows her that her hard work doesn't go unnoticed. For Flitwick, this event also speaks to his broader approach to teaching. His praise of Hermione goes beyond the superficial or the expected. He doesn't simply offer a generic compliment. He recognizes the specific level of difficulty involved in performing the Protego charm with such precision. In doing so, he shows that he understands the nuances of magic and the effort required to master it. His recognition of Hermione's talent is a reflection of his commitment to fostering a learning environment where students are encouraged to push beyond their limits and explore the full potential of their magical abilities. Flitwick's ability to see his students as individuals and provide them with personalized encouragement is what makes him such a beloved and effective teacher. Number 17 tried to maintain order during Celestina Warbeck concerts. Professor Flitwick was a man of many unexpected qualities, but one that often went unnoticed in the grand scheme of things was his deep appreciation for music. Despite being primarily known for his expertise in charms and his role as the beloved diminutive head of Ravenclaw House, there was an element of his personality that intrigued those who truly paid attention to the subtle details of the Harry Potter series. Flitwick's fondness for music was not just a passing hobby, but a passion that deeply connected him to one particular figure in the wizarding world, the famous Celestina Warbeck, a name that resonated with many for her hauntingly beautiful voice. Those who delved into the books beyond the obvious magical exploits found a hidden story of Flitwick's enthusiasm for this singer and his often comical efforts to bring some semblance of order during her concerts at Hogwarts. In the 6th book, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, readers are treated to an amusing yet revealing moment when Flitwick is mentioned in the context of a musical performance. It is during the holiday season that Hogwarts hosts one of its most anticipated events, Celestina Warbeck's concert. She is a well-known performer in the wizarding world, loved for her sensational, dramatic songs that had enchanted generations of witches and wizards. The mention of Flitwick's involvement in her concerts is a curious one, for it shows that beneath his strict demeanor as a teacher, Flitwick had a soft spot for the magical arts beyond spells and potions. Flitwick's efforts to maintain order during Celestina, his concerts were an ongoing battle. The students, particularly the younger ones, would often get swept up in the excitement of the performance, forgetting their manners and the importance of remaining composed in the presence of their revered professor. It was common for Flitwick to attempt to restore order, waving his hands frantically in the air, his small figure desperately trying to maintain some sense of discipline in the chaos. Yet despite his best efforts, the student's attention was always drawn more to the performance itself than to the rules he was attempting to enforce. The charm of Celestina Warbeck's songs was undeniable, and for many of the students, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to hear the legend sing live. Flitwick, however, seemed to approach the situation with a sense of responsibility. While his heart may have been swept up in the music, his sense of duty to the students of Hogwarts led him to act as the de facto enforcer of the rules. His usual cheerfulness did little to diminish his sense of the importance of maintaining order. His attempts to keep the students from disrupting the concert showcased the complexity of his character, a mixture of enthusiasm for the performance, dedication to his role, and a love for keeping things orderly, even when it seemed like an impossible task. In one notable scene, it is mentioned that Flitwick had tried to convince the Hogwarts choir to perform one of Celestina's state songs. His passion for the music was palpable, and it was clear that he admired Celestina not just as a performer, but as an artist who brought joy to those around her. His attempts to get the students to sing her songs were met with mixed results, though. Some students seemed eager to participate, while others, particularly those who found themselves distracted by the allure of the singer, his voice, were less interested in focusing on the task at hand. It was a charming, if slightly futile, attempt by Flitwick to combine his love for the magical arts with his role as a teacher who sought to instill discipline. Flitwick's dedication to maintaining order during Celestina. His concerts spoke volumes about his personality. It was clear that he took his job as a teacher very seriously, even when faced with the distractions of magic, music, and youthful exuberance. His attempts were always delivered with a warm smile, as though he knew his efforts were in vain, but he never stopped trying. The students, despite their antics, respected Flitwick for his tireless enthusiasm and good-natured nature. His unwavering commitment to his responsibilities only served to make him more beloved by his students, who appreciated both his strictness and his kindness. The fact that Flitwick's musical inclinations were so closely tied to his efforts to bring some order to Hogwarts' chaotic student body also reflected the contrast between his light-hearted personality and the more serious aspects of his magical responsibilities. He was not only a teacher of charms, but a man who understood the importance of art in the wizarding world. His fondness for Celestina Warbeck's music was in a way an extension of his belief that magic was not just about the casting of spells, but about the joy and beauty it could bring to the world. Through his efforts to encourage students to appreciate music as much as magic, Flitwick proved that he was much more than just a teacher of spells. He was a teacher of life. While his attempts to keep order during the concerts may have been in vain, they highlighted an important aspect of Flitwick's character. He was a man of balance, someone who understood that the pursuit of knowledge and discipline was important, but that joy and celebration also had their place in the magical world. The contrast between Flitwick's attempts at enforcing discipline and the uncontrollable enthusiasm of the students during Celestina, his concerts served to underscore the fact that Flitwick was not merely a strict enforcer of rules, but a teacher who believed in the importance of bringing joy to his students' lives. Number 18. Assessed Fred and George's enchantment skills. Professor Phileas Flitwick, the charming and diminutive charms master at Hogwarts, is a character often overshadowed by the more prominent figures of the wizarding world. Yet beneath his cheerful demeanour and unassuming stature lies a wealth of knowledge and a keen eye for talent that would make him a pivotal figure in one of the most significant moments in the life of Fred and George Weasley. It is Flitwick who, unbeknownst to many, plays a crucial role in the twins' eventual decision to open their joke shop, quote, 14. This detail, revealed only in the pages of J.K. Rowling's books, sheds light on his deeper understanding of magic and his ability to appreciate the innovative, albeit mischievous, talents of his students. Fred and George, notorious for their pranks and experiments with magic, were not the type of students who followed traditional paths. Their curiosity and flair for the unconventional were clear from the beginning, as they constantly sought ways to push the boundaries of what was considered acceptable at Hogwarts. Their mischievous nature often led to trouble, but it also sparked moments of brilliance, one of which was their eventual ambition to open a magical joke shop that would become a hallmark of their careers. However, before that dream could materialize, they needed to prove their ability to enchant objects, an essential skill for any aspiring entrepreneur in the magical world. Enter Professor Flitwick, who, unlike some of his colleagues, was not quick to dismiss the twins' unconventional approach to magic. Instead of focusing on the more traditional aspects of magical education, Flitwick was one of the few who recognized the potential in Fred and George's antics. When the twins decided to take their first serious step toward opening their shop, they knew that to truly make their mark, they would need to pass a test that assessed their magical skills, specifically their ability to enchant items. The task was part of the standard procedure for students at Hogwarts who wanted to demonstrate their proficiency in charms. While the majority of students performed traditional charm work, Fred and George saw an opportunity to show something different, something that would surprise and impress. Though the specifics of the exam were never fully detailed in the books, we do know that Professor Flitwick was the one who conducted it. Flitwick, with his vast experience and expertise, had the rare gift of seeing beyond the surface. He understood that Fred and George were not merely jesters who wasted their time on pranks, but were, in their own right, creators of new magical possibilities. It is said that he was, quote, 16, by the twins' ingenuity, a sentiment that speaks volumes about his ability to appreciate the subtleties of their approach. While other professors may have been frustrated by the twins' antics, Flitwick recognized that their creativity was an essential part of their magical prowess. His approval, while understated, was a pivotal moment in Fred and George's journey. The examination itself was likely a demonstration of Fred and George's flair for invention. They were not the type of students to perform a simple levitation charm or conjure a basic object. Instead, they would have presented something innovative, perhaps a charm with unexpected effects or a magical item imbued with a mischievous twist. In fact, as they later proved with their joke shop, they had an uncanny ability to create magical products that defied expectations. Their creations were not just enchanted items, they were pieces of magic that entertained, delighted, and sometimes even startled their customers. Professor Flitwick's reaction to their work further solidifies his role as a key supporter of the twins' unconventional journey. He wasn't just a teacher who followed a set curriculum, but a professor who understood the importance of encouraging students to explore their own magical paths. While his support may not have been as vocal or dramatic as that of some other characters, his quiet encouragement played an instrumental role in helping Fred and George hone their skills. His approval was a small but significant gesture that allowed them to believe in the value of their own creative pursuits, even when others might have dismissed them as mere pranks. What is particularly fascinating about this moment is that it shows a different side of Professor Flitwick. Known for his jovial personality and his expertise in charms, he was often seen as a light-hearted and somewhat comic figure in the series. However, his willingness to embrace the twins' unique style of magic reveals a deeper layer of his character. Flitwick was not just a teacher who imparted knowledge, but a mentor who recognized potential in even the most unconventional of students. In many ways, this moment exemplifies his belief in the importance of creativity and individuality in magic. Magic, after all, is not just about following rules, it is about pushing the boundaries of what is possible, something that Fred and George embodied in every prank and invention. Moreover, Flitwick's support also served as a counterpoint to the more traditional views of other professors, who were often less receptive to the twins' antics. For example, Professor McGonagall, though supportive of Fred and George in her own way, often found herself at odds with their rebellious nature. She appreciated their cleverness but did not always approve of their methods. Similarly, other teachers, such as Snape and Umbridge, were quick to punish the twins for their behavior. In contrast, Flitwick, with his broad-minded approach, stood as an advocate for innovation. His acceptance of their unconventional approach to magic demonstrated that Hogwarts was a place where all kinds of talent could thrive as long as students were willing to embrace their creativity. Number 20. Created magical rain to extinguish cursed fires. Professor Phileas Flitwick, the esteemed charms master at Hogwarts, is one of the most intriguing and enigmatic characters in the Harry Potter universe, especially for those who have closely read the books. While his diminutive stature, often concealed by his enchanting, exuberant personality, may lead some to overlook him, there is one fascinating and little-known fact about Flitwick that only those who have read the books carefully would know. Phileas Flitwick was one of the few wizards capable of performing a very rare and complex spell, the creation of a charming rain. This spell, which he wielded to extraordinary effect during the Battle of Hogwarts, is a testament to both his mastery over charms and his remarkable skill in manipulating the forces of nature itself. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, when the battle at Hogwarts was raging in full force, the school was under siege by Death Eaters. The skies were filled with the deafening sounds of explosions, curses, and the terrifying cries of combat. At this moment of extreme danger, Professor Flitwick, ever the composed and competent wizard, used a spell that demonstrated not only his knowledge of complex charms, but also his ability to handle magical elements with precision. As the battle unfolded and the castle was under heavy attack, he conjured a rain that was not just ordinary precipitation, but one that had an almost mystical quality to it. This was no simple aguamenti, the water-producing charm commonly used by wizards to douse flames or hydrate a thirsty creature. No, Flitwick's spell was something far more sophisticated and rare, a charming rain. What made this rain particularly powerful and unique was its ability to suppress even the most destructive of dark magic. As flames from the inferno caused by curses and the chaos of battle raged around Hogwarts, Flitwick, this enchanted rainfall, worked its way through the battlefield. The rain was not merely water but infused with an enchanted essence that doused the fire as though it were being absorbed by the very air itself. In this way, Flitwick's rain was not just a mundane weather event, it was an active force in the battle, one capable of nullifying the fire that had been ignited by the dark forces threatening the castle. This use of the spell during the battle was crucial, as it helped to reduce the damage and protect Hogwarts and its defenders from the destructive magic unleashed upon them. The charm that Flitwick performed was far beyond the reach of most wizards. It required a profound understanding of both magical theory and elemental control, a rare combination that only a select few in the wizarding world could achieve. Unlike the standard aguamenti, which simply conjures a stream of water, the to quote 22, created by Flitwick was an enchanted phenomenon that seemed to possess its own will, responding to the magical conditions of the battlefield and adapting to the circumstances at hand. It was this adaptability and precision that made Flitwick's version of the spell so incredibly rare. Most wizards, even those skilled in charms, would find such a feat nearly impossible to perform, especially under the pressure of such a high-stakes situation. The complexity of the spell also speaks to Flitwick's deep commitment to his craft. Throughout the series, it is clear that he is not just an ordinary teacher, he is a wizard of extraordinary talent, with a sharp mind and a wealth of knowledge about charms and magical theory. His small stature and affable demeanor may make him appear unassuming, but in moments of peril such as the Battle of Hogwarts, his true power shines through. It is here that Flitwick proves that mastery of magic is not just about physical strength or bravado, but about deep magical intelligence, creativity, and the ability to adapt spells to meet the needs of the moment. The charming rain also highlights a key aspect of Flitwick's character that is often overshadowed by his other qualities, his loyalty and dedication to the cause of defending Hogwarts. Throughout Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, we see a variety of characters come into their own during the battle, with many stepping up to the task of protecting the school and its students. However, Flitwick's actions in this regard are especially significant. While he is often seen in a more academic or comical light throughout the series, when the time comes, he is an unflinching fighter. The conjuring of the enchanted rain is not just an act of skill, it is a deliberate, strategic move aimed at protecting the school, his students, and his colleagues from harm. This loyalty to Hogwarts and its students runs deep, and it is this devotion that propels him to perform such a difficult and dangerous charm, even when the odds seem insurmountable. It's worth noting that this spell is not something that the Death Eaters expected. Most of the dark wizards and witches who were attacking the school would have been accustomed to seeing traditional spells used in combat, curses, hexes, and fire-based spells, all meant to destroy and overpower. But Flitwick's approach was different. Rather than attacking with more fire or destruction, he used a natural element to fight back. His use of the charming rain was not just a tactical move, it was symbolic of his character's approach to magic, a preference for cleverness, subtlety, and a reliance on precision over brute force. This event also reveals an important piece of magical history in the Harry Potter series. While much of the wizarding world is familiar with spells like Lumos or Expelliarmus, much of the magic that exists in the world is hidden away waiting to be discovered by those with the knowledge and skill to access it. Flitwick's ability to conjure a rain that could put out even the darkest of flames shows that magic, at its core, is a vast and untapped resource with so much more to it than the commonly known spells that most witches and wizards are familiar with. There are many layers to magic, and Flitwick's brilliance was in his ability to unlock these layers and apply them creatively when it mattered most. What is even more remarkable is that Flitwick's actions did not go unnoticed. His skills were respected even by those who fought against him. The Death Eaters, known for their ruthless and destructive nature, would have certainly recognized the significance of his spell. In fact, it is likely that they were aware of the danger that Flitwick posed to their plans, as his ability to quell the flames and suppress the destructive power of their magic directly threatened their efforts to take control of Hogwarts. His skill was such that it earned him respect even from his enemies, and in the high-stakes battle, that kind of recognition was crucial. Through the use of the charming rain, Professor Flitwick displayed not only his technical mastery of charms, but also his remarkable understanding of the delicate balance of nature and magic. In a world where fire and destruction often reign, Flitwick showed that sometimes the most effective magic is that which preserves, protects, and nurtures life. The rain that fell during the Battle of Hogwarts was not just a simple weather phenomenon, it was a living, breathing testament to Flitwick, his talent, dedication, and the deep respect he commanded from both his allies and his adversaries alike. This little-known fact about Professor Flitwick is a perfect example of how J.K. Rowling's world is filled with hidden layers of magic and meaning that only reveal themselves through careful reading and attention to detail. Flitwick's ability to summon the charming rain is a remarkable feat, one that only a truly exceptional wizard could accomplish. It serves as a subtle reminder that even in the midst of a battle, there is room for creativity, precision, and a mastery of the elements, qualities that make Flitwick one of the most underrated and fascinating characters in the Harry Potter series. Number 21 helped enchant protective spells over Hogwarts. When the Second Wizarding War darkened the skies above the Wizarding World, Hogwarts was not immune to the growing threat of Voldemort's dark forces. In those harrowing days when Death Eaters were being mobilized and the Dark Lord's return became a frightening reality, Dumbledore took a rare step. He ordered an unprecedented strengthening of Hogwarts' magical defenses. Among the many individuals who rose to this daunting task, one professor played a crucial but often overlooked role, Professor Phileas Flitwick, the tiny charms master with a heart as grand as his magical abilities. Flitwick was known to many students as a charming, kind, and somewhat quirky teacher. He was often remembered for his gentle nature, his enthusiasm for charms, and his eccentric height. However, those who had the privilege of knowing him more deeply understood that Flitwick was far from being just a simple teacher of spells. Beneath his gentle demeanor and sparkling eyes lay a brilliant wizard who had seen and experienced much in his long career. His expertise was vast and far-reaching, and during the darkest days of the wizarding world, his knowledge became indispensable. When Voldemort's return became undeniable and the walls of Hogwarts seemed to grow thinner by the day, Dumbledore, ever the tactician, knew that the school's safety was paramount. Not only were the students in grave danger, but the very heart of the wizarding world, the place where magic was taught, protected, and preserved, needed to be shielded from the inevitable storm that would come crashing down. Flitwick's expertise in charms made him a natural choice for a critical mission, fortifying the magical defences of Hogwarts to prepare for the onslaught of dark magic that would soon follow. Flitwick's role in this effort is not widely known to many outside the most trusted circles. It wasn't just a case of casting the occasional spell to maintain the charms around the castle. He worked tirelessly, weaving enchantments that would protect every inch of Hogwarts from the dark forces that threatened its existence. With the school as very foundations at risk, Flitwick used his deep understanding of protective magic to create some of the most powerful charms ever cast on the castle. These charms weren't merely designed to ward off intruders, but to react in real time to the sinister energy that emanated from the Dark Lord, his followers. The first significant task Flitwick faced was reinforcing the protective barriers around the school. These magical barriers were meant to keep unwanted visitors, particularly those with ill intentions, out of Hogwarts and, more importantly, to keep the students inside the castle safe. While many had assumed these barriers to be impenetrable in the past, they were far from foolproof. Flitwick recognized that Voldemort's dark magic could potentially penetrate these defenses, so he enhanced them with layers of spells so intricate and advanced that even the most skilled dark wizards would find them nearly impossible to bypass. These protective spells created a layered defense system that would react to any dark magic that came into proximity, providing a much-needed safeguard for those who were within the castle walls. Flitwick's contributions didn't end with these defensive measures. As the situation became more dire, he began working with other professors to install a series of enchantments that would alert the castle, as well as inhabitants, to the presence of dark forces. These enchantments were capable of detecting subtle magical shifts and could identify dark magic signatures long before they materialized into a full attack. In times of danger, these alarms would ring out, giving the inhabitants of Hogwarts a chance to prepare for whatever threat might be approaching. It was a system designed not only for defense but for survival, allowing the students and teachers the precious moments they needed to react. One of the most important spells that Flitwick contributed to the overall defense strategy was the magical barrier surrounding the entrances to the castle. These barriers had always been strong, but Flitwick augmented them with new charms that would not only block physical intruders, but also prevent magical ones. No longer could Death Eaters simply apparate into the grounds of Hogwarts with ease. The complex warding spells that Flitwick placed over the gates were an innovation that made it almost impossible for dark wizards to breach the castle's perimeter without triggering a violent magical response. Even though Flitwick worked in the shadows, his contributions were vital. He was often seen in the dead of night, his wand flicking in the air as he murmured incantations that could change the course of history. It was said that the charms professor poured much of his energy into these protective measures, feeling personally responsible for the safety of every single student and staff member. His quiet dedication to the cause was a stark contrast to the chaos swirling around him, and yet his contribution was perhaps one of the most crucial to Hogwarts' survival during those turbulent times. As the war escalated and Voldemort's forces grew stronger, the charm professor continued his efforts, expanding the magical defenses around the school. He knew that the battle was coming closer and closer to Hogwarts, and he wasn't willing to let it fall into the hands of the Dark Lord. Alongside other key figures like Professor McGonagall, who was handling the defensive spells protecting the grounds, and Professor Snape, who was managing intelligence and counter-dark magic operations, Flitwick was an essential piece of the puzzle in keeping the castle safe. The timing of his work was impeccable as the attacks from the Death Eaters became more frequent. The castle's defences held firm during these strikes, often forcing the dark wizards to retreat. Unable to breach the enchanted barriers Flitwick had so carefully woven, the protective charms not only kept out dark wizards but also prevented more insidious threats, such as dark magical creatures and cursed objects, from entering the castle. Perhaps one of the most overlooked aspects of Flitwick's contributions was his role in ensuring the students' protection during the Battle of Hogwarts itself. By the time the final showdown arrived, Flitwick had created a series of contingencies that proved invaluable when the final attack came. As Voldemort's forces descended upon the school, Flitwick's magic continued to protect those who took shelter inside the castle walls. It is easy to forget the quiet, often unassuming figures like Flitwick, who played such a significant role in the fight against darkness. He was a key part of the larger strategy, making sure that every detail, no matter how small, was accounted for. It was his magical expertise that kept Hogwarts standing, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Flitwick's efforts, though never fully recognized by the public, were a shining example of the quiet power that existed within the walls of Hogwarts. His brilliance, his dedication, and his unwavering commitment to the safety of his students were unparalleled. Even when the shadows of the war threatened to consume everything, Flitwick's charms kept Hogwarts safe, giving its inhabitants the courage they needed to stand firm in the face of the greatest darkness they had ever known. His story, though hidden behind the dust of history, serves as a testament to the fact that sometimes the most important contributions come from those who work quietly, without fanfare, in the background. Professor Phileas Flitwick, the Charms Master, is a hero in his own right, a hero whose magic helped shape the destiny of the wizarding world during its darkest days. Number 22 admired Luna Lovegood as unconventional thinking. Professor Phileas Flitwick was always seen as one of the more enigmatic figures at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. He was the Charms Master, the small, energetic professor with an almost constant twinkle in his eye, known for his quick wit and a boundless enthusiasm for magic. While most students found his classes to be a delightful blend of humor and education, few understood the depth of his character beyond his professional demeanor. Yet one detail about Professor Flitwick's character remains subtly hidden in J.K. Rowling's books: his admiration for the peculiar student Luna Lovegood. Luna Lovegood was an eccentric and often misunderstood character. Known for her dreamy demeanor, bizarre beliefs, and odd fashion choices, she was frequently dismissed as strange by her peers. Many students at Hogwarts found it easy to mock Luna. Her unique thoughts and unwavering belief in creatures like the crumple-horned Snorkack made her an easy target for ridicule. Despite this, Luna was a brilliant student. Her creativity and deep understanding of magical creatures showing that she had a unique perspective on the world. Professor Flitwick, however, never saw Luna as strange or ridiculous. Unlike other teachers who often struggled to understand Luna's unconventional approach to learning, he was genuinely fascinated by her. Flitwick, with his vast knowledge of magic, saw that Luna possessed an unusual gift that made her stand out among her peers. In the classroom, he treated Luna with the same respect and encouragement that he showed to all his students, but it was clear that he saw something special in her. This admiration wasn't just passive. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Flitwick expresses his respect for Luna's abilities in a way that reveals much about his character. During a moment of reflection, he says, "People like her make magic truly interesting." This simple sentence speaks volumes about the professor's philosophy on magic. For Flitwick, magic wasn't just about following the rules or performing simple spells correctly. It was about creativity, imagination, and looking beyond the surface. Luna's unconventional approach to magic, her refusal to conform to the norms of the wizarding world, was something Flitwick recognized as a strength. What makes this quote particularly fascinating is that it stands in stark contrast to the general attitude of the wizarding world toward those who did not fit in. Luna was often treated as a quirky outcast by her classmates and even by some professors. However, Flitwick's endorsement of her thinking reveals a deeper understanding of magical talent. In his eyes, Luna's eccentricity was not a flaw but an asset, a way of approaching magic that was just as valuable, if not more so, than the traditional methods. He saw in her the same kind of out-of-the-box thinking that would ultimately lead to new discoveries in the magical world. Flitwick's respect for Luna also highlights a key aspect of his teaching style. He never imposed strict conformity on his students. While other professors might have been more rigid in their expectations, Flitwick encouraged individuality. He respected students for who they were, not just for how well they could memorize spells or follow instructions. This approach helped create a classroom atmosphere where creativity was valued, and it was no surprise that students like Luna, who might have been overlooked elsewhere, flourished under his guidance. Flitwick's ability to recognize Luna's potential also speaks to his personal experiences and his understanding of what it means to be different. As a half-giant, Flitwick himself was no stranger to being underestimated or seen as odd. His small stature and magical prowess often led to surprise from others, as people were quick to dismiss him based on his appearance. Perhaps it was because of this that Flitwick was so keenly aware of the value of seeing beyond superficial qualities and recognizing the deeper worth in others. He knew that magic was not about fitting in with the crowd, but about embracing its unique perspective and using it to push the boundaries of what was possible. This admiration for Luna was not just confined to his role as a teacher. Flitwick's respect for her extended beyond the classroom as well. While many of the staff at Hogwarts were either indifferent to Luna or downright dismissive, Flitwick was one of the few who took the time to understand her. He saw her for what she truly was, a student with a brilliant mind and an unshakable sense of wonder. Unlike many of the other professors, who might have been too busy to engage with Luna on a personal level, Flitwick took the time to notice her contributions and acknowledge her ideas. The relationship between Flitwick and Luna was a reflection of the kind of teacher he was, someone who nurtured students not only for their academic abilities, but also for their individuality. He encouraged Luna to embrace her uniqueness rather than try to conform to what others expected of her. This was especially evident in how he praised her efforts and treated her with the utmost respect, even when others were quick to judge her. For Luna, this kind of encouragement was vital. Throughout her time at Hogwarts, she often felt like an outsider. Her belief in magical creatures and her unconventional views about the world made her a frequent subject of ridicule. Yet in Flitwick, she found someone who not only accepted her quirks but also valued them. His praise and recognition of her abilities helped Luna gain confidence, both in her magical talents and in her own self-worth. It's also worth noting that Flitwick's admiration for Luna was rooted in a genuine appreciation for the magic she brought to the world. He was a teacher who believed in the transformative power of magic, and he saw that Luna's understanding of magic was just as powerful as that of any other student. For him, the fact that she could see things others couldn't and approach magic in such a unique way was a testament to her talent. Flitwick didn't just teach the mechanics of magic, he fostered a deeper love and respect for it, encouraging his students to see magic not just as a tool, but as a way of experiencing and understanding the world. This attitude is exemplified by how Flitwick consistently stood by his students, especially Luna. While many others might have seen her eccentricities as an obstacle to learning, Flitwick embraced them, using them as an opportunity to explore new ideas and challenge the norms. His respect for her was not just about recognizing her abilities, it was about valuing her as a person with all her quirks and peculiarities. In this way, Flitwick demonstrated the importance of nurturing individuality and creativity in education, qualities that helped his students grow into strong, independent witches and wizards. Professor Flitwick's admiration for Luna Lovegood is a small but significant detail in the larger narrative of the Harry Potter series. It reminds readers that magic is not just about what is visible or conventional. It is about seeing the world differently and using that perspective to create something truly extraordinary. Flitwick's recognition of Luna's unique approach to magic is a testament to his wisdom and understanding of what makes true magic. He understood that magic, at its heart, is about the ability to believe in the impossible and to see possibilities where others see only limitations. Through his admiration for Luna, Flitwick teaches us that sometimes the most valuable talents are the ones that cannot be measured by conventional standards. Number 23. Studied forgotten spells and ancient magic. Professor Flitwick was one of the most intriguing characters in the Harry Potter series, often overlooked in comparison to the more prominent figures like Dumbledore, Snape, and Harry himself. While his role as the charms professor at Hogwarts was well known, there was much more to Flitwick than met the eye. He was not just a charming, kindly teacher with a penchant for small, quirky gestures. He was also a dedicated scholar, deeply immersed in the study of ancient magic. This aspect of Flitwick's character, which only the readers who paid close attention to the books would discover, reveals an intriguing side to his personality and sets him apart as one of the most knowledgeable and gifted wizards of his time. Flitwick's passion for ancient magic was a quiet yet significant part of his life, and it was something that he had been pursuing long before he became a teacher at Hogwarts. He wasn't just interested in the spells that were commonly taught to students. His true fascination lay in the lost arts, the forgotten charms, and the long-forgotten spells that had once been part of the wizarding world's rich and diverse magical heritage. While many other wizards and witches focused on practical magic, Flitwick had always been drawn to the theoretical, the historical, and the obscure. His research into ancient forms of magic had made him one of the foremost authorities on the subject, And it was this knowledge that allowed him to wield a level of power and skill that few could rival. In, quote, 37. Flitwick reveals a fascinating tidbit about his studies, specifically his work on an ancient charm. In a conversation with Professor McGonagall, Flitwick mentions that he was working on restoring a long-lost spell that could help reinforce the walls of Hogwarts. This spell, which had been used centuries ago, had the potential to strengthen the castle as defenses against the many threats it faced, including those from dark magic. Flitwick's involvement in such an endeavour shows that he wasn't just content with teaching students the basics of charms. He was actively engaged in the preservation and restoration of magical knowledge that had been forgotten by most of the wizarding world. This moment in the book is a testament to Flitwick, his character. He wasn't just a teacher, but a researcher and a scholar dedicated to unlocking the secrets of the past. His work on this spell demonstrated his commitment to preserving the integrity and safety of Hogwarts, not just in the present, but for future generations. Flitwick was well aware of the dangers that dark forces posed to the wizarding world, and he knew that understanding and utilizing ancient magic could be a key to defending against those threats. What's even more remarkable is that Flitwick's knowledge of ancient magic wasn't limited to just one spell or charm. He had a vast understanding of the magical arts from the time before Hogwarts was even founded. Ancient magic, the kind that predated the modern spells taught in Hogwarts classrooms, was something that many wizards had forgotten, either through ignorance or neglect. However, Flitwick had dedicated his life to studying these forgotten arts, ensuring that the ancient magic would not be lost to time. One of the most notable aspects of Flitwick's studies was his focus on the earliest charms and spells that were used in the founding of Hogwarts. The four founders of Hogwarts, Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin, were known to have wielded incredible magical power. The spells they created and used were not only foundational to the school, but also groundbreaking in the world of magic. Flitwick's research into these early charms demonstrated his reverence for the history of the magical world and his desire to ensure that the wisdom of the past was not forgotten. In addition to his work on the ancient charm to reinforce Hogwarts walls, Flitwick was also involved in the study of lost magical texts. These texts, some of which were centuries old, contained knowledge that had been passed down through generations, but had been gradually lost as time went on. Flitwick's dedication to finding and restoring these texts was a reflection of his deep respect for the history of magic and his belief that understanding the past was crucial for facing the challenges of the present and future. Flitwick's pursuit of ancient magic wasn't just an academic endeavor, it was also deeply personal. He understood that magic, like any other form of knowledge, could be used for both good and ill. The ancient spells and charms he studied had the potential to be incredibly powerful, but they also carried with them the risk of being misused. This was something that Flitwick took very seriously. He knew that in the wrong hands, such magic could be dangerous. That's why he was so careful in his research, always mindful of the potential consequences of rediscovering long-lost spells. One of the most intriguing aspects of Flitwick's study of ancient magic was his ability to balance his role as a teacher with his work as a researcher. He was a beloved figure at Hogwarts, known for his kindness, his encouragement, and his excellent teaching. Yet behind his warm smile and his gentle demeanour, Flitwick was a wizard who had spent countless hours poring over ancient texts, trying to unlock the secrets of magic that had been hidden for centuries. He wasn't just a teacher who passed on knowledge, he was someone who sought to expand the boundaries of magical understanding. Flitwick's research into ancient magic also had practical applications, particularly when it came to the safety of Hogwarts and its students. The castle, with its many secrets and hidden chambers, was a place of great historical significance, and Flitwick's work on reinforcing its defences was just one example of how his scholarly pursuits were directly tied to the well-being of the wizarding world. The fact that he was working on such a project during the rise of Voldemort and the Death Eaters was no coincidence. Flitwick understood the importance of being prepared for any eventuality, and he knew that the ancient spells he was studying could play a pivotal role in that preparation. Flitwick's studies also demonstrated the importance of preserving the magical heritage of the wizarding world. In a time when many wizards were focused on new and trendy forms of magic, Flitwick was a quiet advocate for the importance of history. His belief in the value of ancient magic was a reminder that the past had much to teach the present, and that the wisdom of the ages should never be disregarded. There is a particular instance in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows where Flitwick's expertise in ancient magic comes to the forefront once again. When the Battle of Hogwarts takes place, Flitwick plays a crucial role in defending the castle, using his vast knowledge of charms and protective spells. It is here that we see the culmination of all his years of study and research. Flitwick's deep understanding of ancient magic allowed him to stand against the forces of darkness, demonstrating the power of knowledge and the importance of preserving the magical heritage that had been passed down through the centuries. Flitwick's commitment to studying ancient magic, to understanding the foundations of the magical world, and to preserving the safety and integrity of Hogwarts made him one of the most formidable wizards of his time. His work was not just academic, it was personal, practical, and deeply intertwined with the well-being of the wizarding world. While his small stature and friendly demeanour might have made him seem unassuming, Flitwick's knowledge and skill in the ancient arts made him a wizard who was both wise and powerful, capable of taking on challenges that others might have thought impossible. In the end, it was Professor Flitwick's dedication to the study of ancient magic, his willingness to delve into the mysteries of the past, and his tireless efforts to protect Hogwarts that truly set him apart as one of the most fascinating and important characters in the Harry Potter universe. He was more than just a teacher of charms. He was a guardian of magical history, a scholar, and a wizard whose deep knowledge of the ancient magical arts allowed him to make a lasting impact on the wizarding world. Number 24 calmed a rampaging Christmas tree with charm work. It was a cold December evening at Hogwarts, the snow falling gently outside the castle windows, casting a soft, magical glow in the courtyard. The great hall was festooned with decorations of a festive nature, as Christmas had come to the magical school. The house tables had been adorned with shimmering candles, and the enormous tree stood proudly at the centre, sparkling with magical ornaments. It was the season of goodwill, where students and staff alike revelled in the cosy atmosphere, with holiday music softly playing in the background. However, as with all things magical, this peace was not meant to last. especially when it came to the unpredictable nature of magical creatures. Hagrid, the beloved half-giant groundskeeper of Hogwarts, had come to the Great Hall with an enormous tree that was far from your average holiday decoration. He had carefully selected the most spectacular magical Christmas tree he could find from the Forbidden Forest, an unusual, highly temperamental tree that was known to be temperamental, to say the least. Hagrid, always with his heart in the right place, had intended for it to be the most beautiful tree ever to grace Hogwarts, but he had underestimated the wild nature of this particular specimen. The tree, a magical pine with a mind of its own, was immediately displeased with its new surroundings. As Hagrid carefully placed it in the centre of the Great Hall, the tree began to act out. Its branches, usually full of glistening ornaments and twinkling lights, began to thrash wildly about. The decorations were scattered like confetti as the tree began to lash out, flinging baubles and garlands across the room with a fury only a magical creature could muster. Students shrieked and ducked for cover as the tree, its branches, now looking more like the arms of a rampaging troll, flung its limbs in every direction. The chaotic scene was enough to rattle even the most seasoned witch or wizard. But what seemed like a disaster for the students quickly turned into a moment of unexpected calm, all thanks to one very capable professor. Professor Flitwick, the tiny, incredibly skilled charms master of Hogwarts, was nearby when the tree began its rampage. Known for his exceptional skill in the art of charm work, Professor Flitwick was quick to respond to the out-of-control tree. Despite his small stature, he moved with the swiftness and grace of someone who had handled many a magical mishap in his time. With a flick of his wand and a soft muttering of words that seemed to carry the weight of centuries of charm work, Flitwick began to cast a series of calming spells to subdue the unruly tree. His expertise in charms became evident as he approached the tree, his eyes narrowing in concentration. The students watched in awe as the magical tree, which had moments before been causing absolute chaos, began to calm under the careful ministrations of Professor Flitwick. The tree's erratic movements slowed, the branches curling back in, and the decorations that had been flung about floated gently back into place. It was as though the very magic of Flitwick, as spells reached deep into the heart of the tree, coaxing it into submission with a kind of finesse and delicacy only a master of charms could provide. Once the tree had finally stopped its wild movements, Professor Flitwick stepped back, a quiet sigh escaping him. He adjusted his robes, his face as serene as ever, before muttering something under his breath. "Every year the same," he remarked, the words carrying both amusement and a touch of exhaustion. The students, who had been holding their breath in anticipation, couldn't help but laugh at the sheer reliability of the situation. This was not the first time a magical tree had caused a ruckus, and it likely wouldn't be the last. Yet, as always, Professor Flitwick's calm demeanour and precise magic had saved the day. This little-known moment, though, holds more significance than a mere act of charm work. It reveals much about Professor Flitwick's character, his proficiency in magic, and his subtle yet enduring role within Hogwarts. While many students admired the strength and wisdom of Professors McGonagall or Dumbledore, Flitwick's expertise in charms was often quietly appreciated. His ability to manage delicate situations like this, where grace and subtlety were paramount, demonstrated the depth of his skill and the gentle nature that defined him as a professor. Moreover, this incident is a small yet telling example of the magical world's unpredictability. Magic in the world of Harry Potter is not something that can always be tamed or anticipated. It's alive, vibrant, and often wildly unpredictable, much like the enchanted tree that had caused such a stir in the Great Hall. Yet what makes this moment so particularly charming is that it highlights the importance of preparation, knowledge, and expertise in navigating the wildest of magical circumstances. Flitwick's calm and collected response to the out-of-control tree also serves to illustrate his deep understanding of the magical creatures and objects he worked with. It's a trait that is so often overlooked, but Flitwick, his mastery over charms, allowed him to control not just spells, but also the very forces of nature that defied conventional logic. In a world full of unpredictable magic, this is no small feat. His deft handling of the situation with the magical tree speaks volumes about the trust that his students and fellow staff members placed in him. This small episode, while seemingly a light-hearted moment in the midst of Hogwarts Christmas festivities, also highlights the often overlooked depth of Flitwick's character. It shows him not just as a professor, but as someone who consistently rises to the occasion, regardless of the chaos or disorder around him. The students who witnessed this particular moment would likely never forget how the tiny charms professor, with his wits and skill, turned a potentially disastrous situation into one of quiet triumph. In the years that followed, the magical Christmas tree would no doubt be an annual tradition at Hogwarts, but it was the students who would come to remember Professor Flitwick not just for his brilliance in magic, but for the warmth and steadiness he provided in moments of magical mayhem. His intervention that day served as a reminder that in the world of magic, there is no challenge too big, no tree too unruly for a wizard with the right blend of skill and patience. And though Flitwick's words may have been quietly spoken, they echoed in the minds of those who heard them, a gentle acknowledgement of the familiarity of the magical world's unpredictable nature. In the end, it was not just about the Christmas tree or the chaos it caused. It was about the unwavering confidence of Professor Flitwick, whose expertise brought order to the chaos, and the lessons in grace, patience, and humility that he instilled in his students, even in the most unlikely of circumstances. As the years passed, those who had been at Hogwarts during that memorable Christmas would look back on the episode with fondness, grateful for the quiet, unassuming heroism of their charms professor, who had made the season just a little bit brighter with his charm and his calm. Number 25 silently stood up to Umbridge with dignified defiance. In the depths of the magical world, Professor Phileas Flitwick stood as a figure of quiet authority, admired by students for his expertise in charms and his unassuming demeanor. However, what most did not realize was that beneath his short stature and cheerful exterior lay a man of remarkable skill and an unshakable sense of integrity. His interaction with Dolores Umbridge, the cruel and tyrannical ministry-appointed Defense Against the Dark Arts professor in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, revealed a side of him that few had seen before. While Flitwick was never one for direct confrontation, there was a moment during one particular lesson that would remain etched in Umbridge's mind forever. It was a moment that not only reflected Flitwick's intelligence and dignity, but also his subtle defiance in the face of tyranny. The classroom atmosphere was tense. Umbridge, who had recently taken over at Hogwarts and was wreaking havoc with her authoritarian policies, had arrived to observe Flitwick's lesson. A well-known loyalist to the ministry, she was on a mission to impose her will over every aspect of life at Hogwarts. Flitwick, always polite but fiercely competent, had been teaching charms for years, guiding young wizards and witches through complex incantations and magical theory. He had no time for political games, nor did he intend to let a woman like Umbridge ruin his lesson. Flitwick's lesson was underway, as usual, filled with the soft hum of wands weaving spells in the air. The students were engaged, their eyes wide with the wonder of magic as they practiced their charms. However, in the middle of this calm, Umbridge, with her trademark toad-like face, interrupted. It was typical of her to assert her control in every setting, and this was no exception. She moved about the room, scrutinizing Flitwick's every word and action. Her presence alone was enough to unsettle most, yet Flitwick's composure remained unshaken. At some point during the lesson, Umbridge took it upon herself to challenge Flitwick's qualifications. She, who had little to no understanding of practical magic herself, dared to question the man who had taught at Hogwarts for decades and who was far more knowledgeable in his field than she could ever hope to be. Umbridge's tone was insistent, almost mocking, as she suggested that his methods might be outdated. She presumed, in her ignorance, that because he wasn't conforming to her rigid expectations, he must be unqualified or lacking in some way. It was then that Flitwick, in the most polite and measured tone, responded. He did not shout, nor did he raise his voice, but with every word he made it clear that he would not allow her to undermine him. With his customary cheerfulness, he simply stated that he had all the necessary certifications and diplomas to teach at Hogwarts, and that he had been doing so for many years without fail. The calmness of his response, his demeanor unaffected by her blatant interference, sent a subtle message that Umbridge could not ignore. There was no arrogance in Flitwick's words, nor was there any attempt to make her feel inferior. Instead, it was a firm and measured statement of fact. After his declaration, Flitwick gave a small but respectful bow, a gesture that, while polite, carried a weight of defiance. He did not engage further with Umbridge, choosing instead to continue with his lesson, as though she were nothing more than an unwelcome presence in the room. He ignored her attempts to speak, to disrupt, to impose herself on the lesson. This act of quiet resistance was a powerful statement in its own right. It was not an outburst, nor a confrontation. It was simply Flitwick asserting his autonomy in the face of an authority that sought to control everything in its path. In the world of magic, where power often spoke louder than words, Flitwick's decision to stand his ground without making a scene was an incredibly effective form of resistance. By choosing not to rise to Umbridge's provocations, he denied her the reaction she craved. She was left standing there with no choice but to accept the truth of his qualifications and the unspoken message that she could not bully him into submission. For Umbridge, this encounter with Flitwick would undoubtedly remain one of the few instances where she was not able to bend someone to her will. As a character who thrived on humiliation and exerting control over others, the realization that she had failed to intimidate someone who was more skilled and confident in his field than she would ever be must have stung. Flitwick's measured response was the perfect foil to her inflated sense of power. What made this interaction so significant was not only Flitwick's refusal to engage in direct conflict, but also the way he demonstrated his mastery over the situation. He never allowed Umbridge to see him flinch, and he never gave her the satisfaction of a dramatic confrontation. He was a man of dignity and integrity, and in that moment he had shown her exactly what true power looked like. It wasn't about dominance or making a show of strength. It was about quiet resilience, the ability to stand firm in the face of unwarranted criticism. The rest of the students witnessed this exchange, and for them it would serve as a powerful lesson in how to respond to oppression. They saw that it was possible to resist without resorting to violence or anger. They saw that it was possible to hold on to one's dignity in the face of authority, to maintain one's self-respect even when confronted by someone like Umbridge. Flitwick was a role model, not just in his skill as a teacher, but in his ability to show strength without raising his voice or making a scene. For those who had been paying attention, this subtle exchange spoke volumes. It became a point of pride for the students, who admired their professor for the way he handled the situation. While many of them feared Umbridge and her ministry-backed authority, they could see that Flitwick was not cowed. He had faced down someone who had the power to make or break a career, yet he had stood his ground with grace and professionalism. It was a lesson they would carry with them long after they left Hogwarts. In the larger context of the wizarding world, Flitwick's actions were a small but important rebellion against the Ministry, his encroaching control over Hogwarts. At a time when Dumbledore was being dismissed from his post, when the Ministry was slowly poisoning the atmosphere at the school, Flitwick's quiet resistance symbolized the hope that not all was lost. There were still those who would fight back against the dark forces taking root in the magical world, even if they did so in the most understated ways. In the end, Flitwick's interaction with Umbridge was a reminder that resistance doesn't always have to be loud or brash. Sometimes it's the quiet moments that leave the most lasting impression. Umbridge may have thought she could intimidate and control everyone at Hogwarts, but she soon learned that she would never be able to break the spirit of Filius Flitwick. His lesson to her and to all who witnessed it was clear. The power to stand tall and true in the face of adversity lies in one's ability to maintain dignity and composure, even in the most challenging of circumstances. Number 26 made jokes even during wartime preparations. In the heart of the tumultuous final years of the Second Wizarding War, when darkness hung over the world like a storm cloud, there was one person at Hogwarts who always managed to bring lightness to even the heaviest of moments: Professor Filius Flitwick. Known for his diminutive stature, his mastery in charms, and his kind, if sometimes eccentric, demeanor, Flitwick was not just a teacher of magic, he was a beacon of hope and humor during times that threatened to swallow them all. The Battle of Hogwarts was imminent. The walls of the castle were prepared for war, and the students, many of whom had never known anything but peace, found themselves standing on the precipice of life and death. Fear gripped the hearts of many, yet there was one person who consistently found a way to lift spirits even in the darkest of hours: Professor Flitwick. Despite the ever-growing presence of Lord Voldemort and his Death Eaters and the war that raged just outside the castle gates, Flitwick never lost his trademark sense of humor. It was an asset he had used throughout his career, and even in the most perilous times, he remained convinced that a good laugh could heal 1,000 wounds. As the preparations for the battle grew more intense, Flitwick's light-heartedness became more crucial than ever. His ability to deflect the ever-looming threat of war with a clever joke or a playful remark was no small feat. In the midst of preparing for the defense of Hogwarts, when the students and staff alike were on edge, Flitwick's humour acted as a much-needed balm. It was in these moments that his resilience shone brightest, making it clear that no matter the external threat, the human spirit, embodied by people like Flitwick, could not easily be broken. One of the most notable instances of his humour during this period came just before the Battle of Hogwarts, when the teachers were discussing how best to prepare for the defence of the castle. As the staff and students gathered around, Flitwick made a comment that, on the surface, seemed like nothing more than a light-hearted quip, but in reality it revealed much about his character. If the armour comes to life at the wrong moment, say to greet Voldemort with a hug, "I beg you to forgive me, I'm not exactly an expert in polite duels," the room erupted in laughter, and even Hermione Granger, ever serious, couldn't help but smile at the unexpected joke. For Hermione, whose usual demeanour was one of intense focus, this brief moment of levity was not just amusing, it was a reminder of the importance of staying grounded, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. In the midst of all the preparations, all the fear, and all the uncertainty about the upcoming battle, Flitwick's words served as a gentle reminder that they were not entirely powerless. In fact, the very act of laughing together, of sharing a moment of mirth, was in itself a form of resistance against the dark forces that sought to destroy everything they held dear. Flitwick's ability to inject humour into such a dire situation wasn't just about making people laugh, it was about providing them with a psychological reprieve. The battle for Hogwarts was not merely one of physical strength, it was also a battle for morale, and Flitwick understood this better than most. His humour helped to keep the spirits of the students and teachers alive, even as the storm of war raged around them. The students, some of whom were still teenagers, were fighting not just for their homes, but for their very lives. Their fears, anxieties, and uncertainties could have easily overwhelmed them, but Flitwick's humorous quips acted as a shield, protecting them from the crushing weight of their own doubts. In a world where death had become a constant companion, and where the very nature of life and death had become warped, Flitwick's humour represented an act of defiance. It was a refusal to let fear take over, a refusal to let the darkness swallow the light. In his own quiet way, Flitwick was waging his own war, one not against spells or curses, but against despair itself. During the Battle of Hogwarts itself, as Flitwick fought alongside the other professors to protect the students, his humour continued to shine through, even amidst the chaos. While his spells were expertly cast, his words too were a weapon, aimed not at physical targets, but at the morale of those around him. Even as he was faced with the very real possibility of death, he maintained his optimism. His small stature might have made him an unlikely hero in the battle against Lord Voldemort's forces, but his unwavering belief in the power of laughter made him a giant in his own right. At one point, as the battle intensified and the castle shook with the fury of spells, Flitwick made a comment to Professor McGonagall that was typical of him. He remarked with a grin, "Well, Minerva, I do hope we don't lose any of the paintings this time. They are a bit too precious to the students for us to replace." McGonagall, who was normally stern and focused, couldn't help but let out a small laugh in response. It was moments like these that reminded everyone around them of the importance of staying connected, of keeping the human aspect of life alive, even when the world seemed to be crumbling. What made Flitwick's humour particularly special was that it wasn't forced. He didn't use jokes to mask his fear or to distract others from the grim realities around them. Instead, his humour was an authentic part of who he was. Even in the darkest times, he remained true to himself, a wise, kind-hearted professor who knew that laughter could heal even the deepest wounds. His jokes were not just a source of entertainment, they were a lifeline, a thread that connected the students and staff to the world they were fighting to protect. The essence of Flitwick's humour lies in its simplicity. It was never grandiose or theatrical. Instead, it was the kind of humour that could be found in small moments, in fleeting remarks that made people smile when they needed it the most. For Flitwick, the real magic wasn't just in the spells he cast, but in the way he used his words to lighten the hearts of those around him. It was a gift he shared with his students, one that they would carry with them long after the war was over. As the dust settled in the aftermath of the battle, and the world began to rebuild itself in the wake of Voldemort's fall, Flitwick's humour remained an integral part of the Hogwarts community. The war may have been over, but the lessons of resilience, of finding light even in the darkest of times, were lessons that stayed with the students long after they left the walls of the castle. And in all of this, Professor Flitwick played a part, small in stature, but immense in his ability to bring humour, hope, and heart to a world that so desperately needed it. For the students who had fought beside him, Flitwick's wit became a symbol of the resistance against the tyranny they had endured. He was a reminder that no matter how dire the circumstances, there was always room for a smile, a joke, or a laugh. And in a world where humour often felt like a fleeting luxury, Flitwick's steady presence was a beacon of hope that would never fade. Number 27 declined a seat in the Wizengamot to keep teaching. Professor Phileas Flitwick, one of the most revered professors at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, was a man of remarkable talent and character. His petite stature, which often led to the humorous sight of him standing on books or chairs to make himself seen, belied the immense strength of his personality and the depth of his intellect. Flitwick, known for his expertise in charms and his unparalleled skill in magic, was a professor who not only taught his students how to cast spells, but also imparted valuable life lessons on courage, kindness, and responsibility. But there is an interesting fact about this beloved professor that only those who have closely followed the events of the Harry Potter series may know. Flitwick was once invited to serve in the Wizengamot, the highest magical court in Britain, but he turned down the prestigious offer. This fact may seem surprising to some, considering the stature of the Wizengamot and the high regard in which Phileas Flitwick was held by both his peers and students. As a member of the Hogwarts faculty for many years, Flitwick was well respected not just for his magical prowess, but also for his wisdom and integrity. Yet when the Ministry of Magic extended an offer to him, asking him to join the ranks of the Wizengamot, Flitwick politely refused. His decision speaks volumes about the professor as a character, revealing a side of him that values education above all else. Flitwick's refusal to join the Wizengamot was not due to a lack of ambition or desire for power, quite the opposite, in fact. It was a conscious choice that reflected his deep commitment to teaching and his belief in the importance of shaping young minds. As a professor at Hogwarts, Flitwick's role was not simply to instruct students on magical theory, but to guide them in their personal development, helping them grow into responsible, ethical witches and wizards. For him, the role of educator was far more important than the influence or prestige that came with a position in the Wizengamot. The Wizengamot, as a governing body in the magical world, holds great influence. It is responsible for overseeing legal matters of the magical community, including trials for serious crimes and the interpretation of magical law. The position of a Wizengamot member is highly esteemed, often held by individuals with significant experience in politics or law. However, Flitwick's decision to reject such an offer reveals that his heart was not in politics or the complexities of magical law, but in the classroom, where he felt he could make the most meaningful impact. His decision demonstrates a clarity of purpose and an unwavering belief that his calling lay in teaching, not in the pursuit of power. Flitwick's refusal to join the Wizengamot becomes even more significant when we consider the political landscape of the wizarding world during the events of the series. The Ministry of Magic at the time of the offer was a place fraught with corruption and turmoil. The Ministry, under the influence of Cornelius Fudge and later Rufus Scrimgeour, was often portrayed as ineffective and slow to react to the rising threat of Lord Voldemort and his Death Eaters. Flitwick, with his clear moral compass and sharp mind, was undoubtedly aware of the complexities and moral compromises involved in the Ministry's decisions. He was not blind to the flaws of the system and perhaps saw joining the Wizengamot as a potential entanglement in the very political games and corruption that seemed to be taking over the Ministry at the time. Despite his expertise and immense skill in magic, Flitwick's priorities remained grounded in what he considered to be the most important responsibility: educating the next generation of witches and wizards. He was not interested in seeking political power, nor was he driven by the prestige that came with the role. In the classroom, he was in his element. His teaching methods were both innovative and effective, as he was known for making even the most difficult spells seem achievable. Whether it was levitating feathers in first-year charms or teaching more advanced spells like the stunning charm, Flitwick's classes were always engaging, and his students respected him deeply. It is worth noting that Flitwick's commitment to teaching did not mean he was oblivious to the political climate around him. As the events of the series unfold, we see Flitwick actively involved in the defense of Hogwarts during the Second Wizarding War. When Voldemort's forces overtook the Ministry and launched their full assault on the wizarding world, Flitwick, like many others at Hogwarts, understood the gravity of the situation and took action. Yet even in these difficult times, his primary concern remained the safety and well-being of his students. He was not seeking glory or fame for his actions, but rather he acted because it was the right thing to do. His courage and commitment to the protection of Hogwarts and its students were an extension of the same principles that guided his decision to remain a teacher instead of pursuing a political career. Flitwick's philosophy on education was rooted in the idea that knowledge was power, but not in the way that power was often understood by those in positions of authority. For Flitwick, education was not about control or influence, but about empowerment. His passion for teaching was not driven by the desire to mold students into a certain image, but rather by his wish to help them realize their potential. He believed that every student, regardless of their background or abilities, deserved the chance to learn and grow. By fostering a love for learning and a respect for magic, he believed that he was equipping his students with the tools they needed to make a positive impact on the world around them. This deep conviction in the value of education is what set Flitwick apart from other figures in the wizarding world who sought political influence. While many characters in the series, including some of Flitwick's colleagues at Hogwarts, were entangled in the politics of the wizarding world, Flitwick maintained a steadfast focus on what mattered most to him, his students. He understood that education was not just about learning spells or magical theory, but about developing the kind of character and integrity that would guide students throughout their lives. His refusal to join the Wizengamot was not an act of rejection, but rather an affirmation of his commitment to his true calling. Flitwick's example serves as a reminder of the importance of integrity and the value of staying true to one's principles. In a world full of political intrigue and power struggles, Flitwick's decision to remain focused on teaching rather than seeking political power is a testament to the strength of his character. He understood that the true measure of success was not in titles or influence, but in the positive impact one could have on others. By choosing to stay at Hogwarts and teach, Flitwick was making a profound difference in the lives of his students, many of whom would go on to become leaders, heroes, and advocates for justice in the magical world. Ultimately, Professor Flitwick's decision to turn down the invitation to join the Wizengamot is a powerful statement about his values and priorities. While the political world may have offered him prestige and influence, Flitwick knew that his true purpose lay in the classroom, shaping the minds and hearts of the next generation of witches and wizards. His refusal to become part of the political machinery of the wizarding world speaks to the quiet strength of his character and his deep belief in the transformative power of education. Flitwick's legacy, therefore, is not just one of magical expertise, but one of wisdom, humility, and unwavering dedication to the betterment of others. Number 28, created magical music spells for Hogwarts concerts. Professor Phileas Flitwick, the charismatic charms professor at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, is often regarded as a figure of profound knowledge and mastery in the magical world. While his expertise in charms is widely acknowledged, there is one little-known facet of his talents that only the most avid readers of the Harry Potter books may be aware of. Beyond his classroom duties and his pivotal role in the Battle of Hogwarts, Flitwick's contribution to the cultural and social life at Hogwarts is equally remarkable. Few realize that he played a crucial role in the development of magical music, specifically creating a unique charm that allowed Hogwarts Orchestra to perform at grand events and festivities without the need for musicians to actually play the instruments. This charm, designed for the enchanted instruments in the school's orchestra, enabled them to play by themselves, responding to the precise flick of a wand as if the instruments were following the instructions of a conductor. This fascinating detail about Flitwick's talents can be easily overlooked in the larger narrative of his character. Flitwick, known for his small stature and jolly demeanour, is often thought of as a somewhat comical figure, a master of charms with a particular fondness for teaching and for overseeing the students' use of magic in the most non-threatening and enjoyable ways. However, there is much more to him than meets the eye. For instance, his charm for the orchestra instruments, which he meticulously designed, was a perfect example of how magical prowess could blend with the traditions of wizarding society, particularly in the area of music and performance. Through this innovation, Flitwick ensured that even if there were no skilled musicians among the students at Hogwarts, the grand events of the school year, such as the Yule Ball and various holiday celebrations, would still have a magnificent soundtrack. The charm itself is a marvel of enchantment, known only to those who have a deep understanding of Flitwick's abilities. It allows musical instruments to play on their own without the need for physical intervention from a musician. The spell works by magically enchanting each individual instrument to respond to the movements of a conductor's wand, as if the instruments are being led by an invisible hand. In essence, the instruments become an extension of the conductor's will. As the conductor moves their wand, the instruments would follow in perfect harmony, as though a team of skilled musicians were playing them with utmost precision. Flitwick's charm allowed the orchestra to perform flawlessly during school events, adding a magical ambience to the celebrations without requiring an entire band of professional musicians. The implications of this charm were far-reaching for the Hogwarts community. The Yule Ball, which took place during the Triwizard Tournament in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, serves as an excellent example of Flitwick's invention in action. The students who attended the ball were able to experience a magical performance that was as spectacular as it was enchanting. The instruments, responding seamlessly to the invisible guidance of the conductor, his wand, produced melodies that enhanced the grandeur of the event. For those attending the Yule Ball, the music created an atmosphere of elegance and celebration, providing the perfect soundtrack for the night or festivities. No student had to worry about playing an instrument, as the spell took care of it all, allowing them to focus on dancing, socializing, and enjoying the magical experience. Though Flitwick's charm for the orchestra was primarily used for social and festive occasions, its technical brilliance should not be underestimated. The charm was not a simple spell. It required immense precision in its design and execution. Creating a spell that could control multiple instruments at once, ensuring they played in perfect harmony with one another, was a feat of magical ingenuity. The magic must have been carefully calibrated to understand the individual needs and temperaments of each instrument. For instance, a violin, its bowing motion and the breath required for a wind instrument like the flute had to be replicated by the magic in such a way that the result would sound as though an experienced musician was playing each instrument with the appropriate technique. This was no small feat for any wizard or witch, and it further demonstrates Flitwick's depth of knowledge and skill as a charms master. In the context of Hogwarts, Flitwick's creation helped bridge the gap between magical and non-magical elements of the wizarding world. The students at Hogwarts were often introduced to both traditional magical practices and Muggle customs. Music, an art form that transcends cultural boundaries, was one area where the two worlds intersected. The charm allowed students, many of whom came from backgrounds with no exposure to formal music education, to experience the power of musical performance in a way that would have been impossible in a purely Muggle setting. The enchanted instruments did not require any special training or practice from the students, only the guiding hand of Flitwick's spell. This innovation also served to reinforce the idea that Flitwick was not just a teacher, but a figure who influenced the broader magical culture of the wizarding world. As a former dueling champion and a respected member of the Order of the Phoenix, Flitwick's contributions extended beyond the classroom and the battlefield. His work with the orchestra was another example of how he used his magical skills to enhance life at Hogwarts, making the school a more vibrant and inclusive place. The magical orchestra made it possible for everyone to enjoy the beauty of music, regardless of whether they had any particular musical talent. It was an extension of the inclusiveness that Hogwarts itself embodied, a place where every student, no matter their background or skill set, could find a way to contribute and belong. The charm also demonstrates the innovative spirit that runs throughout the Hogwarts community. While many students are taught to master traditional forms of magic, Flitwick's work with the orchestra is an example of how one can take the essence of magic, its flexibility and creativity, and apply it in new and unexpected ways. His invention exemplifies the very heart of wizarding education at Hogwarts, where students are encouraged to push the boundaries of what magic can do. Flitwick's charm for the orchestra is a testament to the idea that magic, when wielded with imagination and care, can bring about changes that enhance not only personal lives but also the collective experiences of an entire community. Interestingly, this innovation had a lasting impact on the magical community beyond Hogwarts. While the orchestra's charm was a relatively small part of Flitwick's overall legacy, it speaks to the larger impact of his work. His influence on the school's cultural practices was significant, and the orchestra's performances, facilitated by his unique spell, were an unforgettable part of the school's history. They allowed students to experience the magic of music in a way that would resonate with them long after they left the school. The performances became a cherished tradition, with each magical note carrying the essence of Flitwick, vision, and talent. Flitwick's charm for the orchestra, then, is more than just a whimsical detail tucked away in the wizarding world. It is an example of the power of magic to shape and transform the world around us. In a school known for its rich history and deep-rooted traditions, this magical innovation added a unique and enchanting dimension to the festivities that students and faculty alike would remember for years to come. As the years passed and generations of students came and went, Flitwick's charm continued to play a crucial role in bringing music to the heart of Hogwarts, ensuring that the magical institution remained as vibrant and alive as ever. Number 29 wore a top hat on festive occasions. Professor Flitwick's sense of style was unique, even in a magical world filled with eccentricities. Though many students admired him for his intellect and magical prowess, there was something that stood out even more in his public persona: his exceptional taste in clothing. The first thing that anyone would notice about Professor Phileas Flitwick at a festive event, such as the Yule Ball or the Christmas feast, was his miniature stature, but also the impeccable way he dressed. As he entered the Great Hall on these occasions, his attire was always a subject of admiration. Dressed in a sharp tailcoat and topped with a tall, elegant top hat, Flitwick looked every bit the part of a distinguished wizard. This unique choice of clothing became one of his signature traits that students and faculty alike came to appreciate. Flitwick's attire wasn't just about aesthetics. It was a reflection of his attention to detail and his understanding of the value of presentation. While his colleagues often dressed in robes befitting their respective roles at Hogwarts, Flitwick's careful attention to his appearance set him apart. His attire was an homage to the formal events of the wizarding world, where appearances mattered It was evident that Professor Flitwick, despite his diminutive size, understood how to carry himself with poise and dignity, and he made sure that his appearance matched the grandeur of the events he attended. For the Yule Ball, where students and teachers alike gathered to celebrate in a magical atmosphere, Flitwick's top hat was the finishing touch that brought his outfit together. Flitwick's choice to wear a top hat wasn't just a matter of personal taste. It carried symbolic weight within the context of the wizarding world. The top hat was a mark of distinction often associated with the elite and high society. In a way, Flitwick was subtly elevating himself in these moments. His appearance at Hogwarts' formal events was more than just an exercise in vanity. It was an invitation for others to see him as not just a professor, but as a well-rounded individual with a keen sense of culture and style. The fact that he could maintain this balance, being both an accomplished charms professor and a fashion-conscious individual, made him all the more endearing to the students. They admired his ability to teach with authority, yet still have a charm that was light-hearted and approachable. One of the most striking examples of Flitwick's fashion choices came during the Yule Ball in Harry, or fourth year. The magical atmosphere of the event was alive with anticipation as students, dressed in their finest robes and the enchanted ceiling shimmered with stars. In the midst of all the glamour and sparkle, Flitwick's appearance stood out even more. As he entered the hall, his presence wasn't overwhelming, but it was undeniably charming. He was not the tallest figure in the room, but he stood with a kind of dignity that others would strive to emulate. The top hat, perched perfectly on his head, was the focal point of his look, completing his sophisticated ensemble. It was a subtle detail, but it reflected Flitwick's personality in a way that only those who paid close attention could truly appreciate. His top hat wasn't just a prop, it was an extension of his character, a sign that he was both comfortable with who he was and confident in his role at Hogwarts. It's the little things such as his choice of attire for these events that allowed students to view him with even more respect. He didn't need to stand tall physically to command attention. His presence, backed by his impeccable fashion choices, made him a memorable figure. As a charms professor, Flitwick was known for his small stature and remarkable skill in magic, yet it was his nuanced understanding of the world around him that made him a beloved figure at Hogwarts. He didn't just teach his students spells and enchantments, he taught them the importance of grace, style, and elegance. Flitwick's sense of fashion wasn't an isolated characteristic, it was an integral part of who he was, a teacher who valued beauty, refinement, and a certain decorum that he passed on to his students. His presence during formal events was an opportunity for him to demonstrate that being a wizard didn't only mean mastering magic. It also meant being in tune with the world and its aesthetics. When one considers the formal occasions at Hogwarts, such as the Yule Ball, it becomes clear just how much Flitwick's attire elevated the experience for everyone involved. His presence was a constant reminder that style and substance could coexist harmoniously. As students shuffled nervously through the hall, preparing for their first dances or nervously watching their dates across the room, Flitwick stood as a beacon of calm and sophistication. The top hat was more than just a piece of clothing, it was a marker of his mastery over the small details in life, the ones that often go unnoticed but ultimately shape the atmosphere of any event. Flitwick's role as a professor was about more than just academic achievements. He instilled a sense of pride in his students, encouraging them to take pride in their appearance and their behavior, just as he did. The fact that he chose to wear a top hat at such events was a testament to his belief in the importance of ceremony and tradition. It wasn't about making a grand statement or drawing attention to himself. It was about creating an atmosphere of respect for the occasion. In his own quiet way, Flitwick used fashion to enhance the magic of the event, making it all the more memorable. Of course, it wasn't just the students who were charmed by Flitwick's sartorial choices. His colleagues, too, took note of the charm's professor, meticulous attention to his appearance. Even Professor McGonagall, who was known for her no-nonsense attitude and strict sense of propriety, had an undeniable appreciation for Flitwick's style. While she may have worn her own robes with dignity, there was something about Flitwick, his top hat and tailcoat, that added an extra level of elegance to the already grand occasion. It's this contrast, the formality of his outfit against his small, sometimes mischievous stature, that made Flitwick's presence so captivating. He was never overbearing, yet always seemed to stand out in a crowd. The top hat, perhaps more than anything else, was a symbol of Flitwick, his commitment to the traditions of the wizarding world. It represented his connection to a time when magical events were characterized by formality and respect. The wizarding community, while rich in magical knowledge, also placed great importance on etiquette and tradition, and Flitwick embodied this aspect of wizarding life. In wearing the top hat, he was honoring those traditions and passing them down to the next generation of wizards. Even though the world of Harry Potter was often filled with conflict and turmoil, Flitwick's presence at Hogwarts was a reminder of the beauty and wonder that still existed in the wizarding world. His attire, while seemingly trivial, helped to create a sense of joy and anticipation during the most magical events. His ability to maintain his dignity and sense of style, despite the challenges that arose around him, became a model for students who were growing up in a world of uncertainty. The simple act of dressing with care for a formal event was, for many students, a way of participating in a tradition that transcended the everyday struggles of their lives. When Flitwick donned his top hat and tailcoat, he wasn't just getting ready for a festive occasion. He was participating in something much larger, a celebration of life, magical moments, big and small. It was through these moments, shared with his students and colleagues alike, that Flitwick truly became a symbol of the magic that existed beyond spells and charms.